Well, it's late, but I finally have time to talk about this Texas lawsuit. I have been itching to get at this all day. I have to say it is by far, from what I've seen, the most serious legal challenge to the election so far. For the most part, I have thought that the the election to me was always questionable, and in time, I saw concrete evidence that showed to me that this election, should not should not just be left alone. It should be challenged. But I've been doubtful that legally, based on what I was seeing, that anything was going to come of that. It seemed to me like the entire legal establishment had been, essentially trying to rig things again for Trump. Harassing what attorneys would take his case, and sending a message to anyone else that hey, no serious attorney should try and challenge this election, or else your career is over, your family will be harassed. That's and so to me, that made this almost impossible, because you just don't have many people on your team. All of the people who are skilled in this field are lining up against you. And so to me, even if the merits were on the side saying that this election has a lot of problems, the odds were against that side. But today, I think that things look a little more even now that the state of Texas has stepped into the ring. We now have a state actually challenging the results of the election in court, which the only court which can hear lawsuits between states, a state suing another state, is the U.S. Supreme Court, so it goes straight to the Supreme Court. And the state of Texas is suing Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia over very concrete matters. It's nothing that really has to be proven, per se. It's not like you're alleging a crime. The crime is spelled out in paper. It was out in public. And it's just a matter of the judge recognizing, the facts for what they are, that they add up to, hey, this election was not carried out in a manner consistent with the U.S. Constitution. And so the basic argument here is that the Constitution says that the state legislature specifically, not the states per se, but the legislature of those states, has the sole authority in determining how electors will be appointed to the Electoral College. And so that means that the state legislature has supreme authority over election law. And therefore, if the election in a state is not carried out in a manner consistent with the statutes passed by the state legislature, well, then that election is not constitutional. And so they have examples of this occurring in different states. In Georgia, it's the deal that Brad Raffensperger, a member of the executive branch, the Secretary of State, struck with some Democrat groups to, I believe it was over the signature matching thing, if I remember correctly, or maybe it had to do with drop boxes or a whole bunch of other stuff. Whatever the thing was, I can't remember the details of the Georgia-specific accusations, but it was the deal was over deviating from the statute as it was written by the Georgia legislature. The Democrat groups were suing, saying we don't like the statute, and so the Secretary of State said, okay, I'm going to bend the rules for you. And this was a very public settlement. And so Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, is alleging, well, this is illegal. It's a deviation from the statute as written by the Georgia legislature. This did not go through the Georgia legislature, and constitutionally, the Georgia legislature has total authority. Brad Raffensperger has zero. If he violated that statute and this election was carried out, according to what Brad Raffensperger says, rather than what the legislature says, this election cannot be used to appoint electors. It's totally illegal, and so it has to be invalidated. Pennsylvania, what was that one over? That was over the something else that the Secretary of State did that deviated from the statute. I'm disappointed that I'm mixing all these up, so that's why I'm not giving you details, because I can't keep straight what they're, because it was different in every state. Well, Wisconsin, I remember, and Michigan, I remember very vividly. Milwaukee County filled in the dates on ballots that did not include the date. I can't remember if that was a birth date or the date that the ballot was filled out. But that's something that, in order for a ballot to be processed, you have to have it filled out correctly. The Milwaukee County decided to just allow everyone who didn't fill that in to still have their ballot counted, and that wasn't true in every other county in Wisconsin, and so therefore you have an equal protection claim there, saying that the rest of the counties and people who were in different counties in Wisconsin, their votes essentially were of differing values. If you lived in Milwaukee, your ballot was more likely to count, and so therefore Milwaukee County had an unfair advantage, and so therefore violating equal protection under the law. In Michigan, it's over the observers being kicked out. That, of course, violates the statute, because the statute very clearly says that observers must be permitted to do their job, which of course we all know in Wayne County that was not the case. At the Detroit absentee ballot counting center, we heard all the testimony of that not too long ago. And so then the question comes down to the matter of standing. Does Texas have standing to sue these states? And I would, from my understanding of how this whole situation works, now who knows, maybe the Supreme Court will decide to be a bunch of hacks and rewrite precedent again, which courts are wont to do when things aren't going their way. But save for that, Texas should be able to sue these states just fine, because Texas, as another state of the union, it agrees to follow the same rules as these other states, in that they only carry out their election in the manner stated by the legislature. The Texas Secretary of State can't deviate from that if he wants to. And so therefore, under equal protection, you could, I don't know if this is their exact argument, but I mean, you could say that that in and of itself violates equal protection, as well as the electors clause, because these different states, they have they're just not following the rules that every other state agreed to follow, and so therefore their fraudulent ballots, or not fraudulent ballots, their fraudulent electors, members of the Electoral College, will cancel out the legitimate electors of a state like Texas or many others. And so just as a casual observer, I think that this case is excellent. This is exactly the kind of serious challenge to the election that I'd been hoping to see for, well, since Election Day, pretty much. Now, the remedy that Ken Paxton and the state of Texas are seeking in this case is that the results of the election be treated as non-binding, and that because the statute was not followed, and so therefore the choice of how to appoint electors should then fall back on the state legislature. The state legislature should meet and approve whatever electors they want to the Electoral College, and in all likelihood that would lead to Trump winning in the Electoral College. But even if they win this case, it's not guaranteed that they will get that remedy. I still think that probably the fairest remedy at this point would just be to throw their electors out entirely. Say to these states, hey, you screwed it up this time. You don't get a vote in the Electoral College this year. Throw them out. Then neither Trump or Biden gets 270, and then it goes to the House. That's how I think this should go. Now, of course, a House vote, because it is by state delegation, would also result in Trump winning. So, what I'm saying is not necessarily a different result, but it's a different path to getting there. And so I am very excited to see where this case goes. I think that it has a good shot. I think that, like I said, it's very serious. I don't think that Ken Paxton would get up there and do this if he was, just a grandstand. I think that most of your Republican lawyers in this country, nearly all of them, are trying their darndest just to not pay attention to all this and hope that Trump goes away. And in doing so, they are willing to excuse very serious and flagrant violations of electoral norms and election law and all the rest. I'm glad that at the very least the state of Texas, as a state that carried out their election properly, to my knowledge, of course there hasn't been nearly as much scrutiny on Texas, but they at least feel like they carried their election out properly, and these other states that clearly did not, they feel are injuring them. Now, this, I think that this lawsuit also is probably Trump's final chance. From what I've seen from the state legislatures in all these different places, they've totally chickened out. They're not going to, stand up for their own rights as the legislature and say, hey, to the executive branch, hey, you screwed up this election, things were not carried out properly, the statutes, that we wrote were not followed, and so therefore we're taking back our power to appoint electors, and we're just going to pick who we want. They're not doing that. The governors of Arizona and Georgia very much are opposed to looking into this issue. So the Supreme Court, which to me, at least, a few of them I think are still people of integrity. I have total faith that Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas are going to come down on the side of what they think the law actually is. I don't think that either of those men are hacks. Of course, it's Kavanaugh and Barrett were all appointed by Trump, and they're still fairly new, so we'll have to see on them. But considering that Barrett and Kavanaugh, I believe both worked on on George Bush's legal team in 2000, you would think that since a lot of this case is rooted in Bush v. Gore, that they would be sympathetic to the argument that Ken Paxton is making. Now, there's also just the obvious fact that Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett were all appointed by Trump. So you would think, maybe they have some sympathy to a case that would benefit Trump. The guy who got them their job, their lifetime appointment. I guess the greatest job you can get in the U.S. government. But again, I don't like people who are just hacks. So hopefully they don't rule based on that. But I from what I can see, and again, I'm not a lawyer, there's a lot of merit to this case. And if this whole election just gets swept under the rug and nothing comes of it legally, there are no challenges to it that go anywhere. There's even for normies, there's no way that you're going to rebuild any sort of confidence in the U.S. electoral system, because what's gone on is just it's just pathetic, and there needs to be consequences. Now, of course, today was also the safe harbor deadline, but that is statutory, not constitutional. So since this is a constitutional question in this lawsuit, a matter of the U.S. Constitution, I would think that something like the statutory safe harbor deadline is not going to be an issue. And there's also the matter that this is an election contest, I would think. So the safe harbor deadline, these states should not be able to take advantage of the safe harbor. And imagine that might have something to do with why this suit, was filed last night. I think it was last night, or at least that's when the news came out. I think Joel Pollack had the scoop on this. And so, the way the safe harbor deadline works is that if, you don't have any election contests by December 8th, then you can be guaranteed that your electors are going to be included in the Electoral College. But there is a contest going on now. And the other thing is that that means that because, it's a guarantee if you get it by December 8th, even if you don't make it by December 8th, there's still the possibility that the Electoral College could admit your electors. I believe that the person who decides that ultimately might be the archivist of the Electoral College. I'm not entirely sure. So considering now that the Supreme Court is yet to hear two two cases on this election, both the Pennsylvania, the constitutionality under the state constitution of mail-in voting in Pennsylvania, Act 77, that is going forward. Then you also have this Texas lawsuit. I don't see why if the safe harbor was such a big deal, why the Supreme Court would be moving forward with hearing these cases. I mean, who knows? Maybe they still have an opportunity to throw out the Texas one. And, I'm not entirely sure, but at the very least, we need to wait to hear about that. I mean, you've got these two big cases docketed at the Supreme Court. I'd have to think that something is that puts the election somewhat in question. The Pennsylvania case by itself doesn't put the result in question, because even if Biden lost Pennsylvania's electoral votes, he would still have over 270. But the Texas lawsuit, that is, and that one you've got, let me think, 62 electoral votes are in play. And if Biden loses 62 electoral votes, that would put him at, 244? And so at that point, neither Biden nor Trump would have 270, or I guess if those states somehow send their votes to Trump, then Trump would obviously win. But if not, if Biden is at 244 and Trump is at 232, I think he said, then it goes to the House. Trump probably wins unless you have a lot of rogue Republicans in different states siding with the Democrats and swaying, the state delegation in Biden's direction. Now, one other remedy that the Supreme Court could go to, I don't know what the likelihood of this is, but I think it's possible, is that they could say, hey, since the results are unclear in these 4 states, maybe we'll just split the electoral votes between Trump and Biden. I don't think that that's likely, but it's something that could happen. And under that solution, Trump would get an additional 31 electoral votes, and Biden would lose 31 out of the 62 that are involved in this suit. And so Biden would have 275 to Trump's, what would that be, 263? And so the Supreme Court could, in effect, again, this is kind of a cop-out in my opinion, this is the reason why I think you should consider the Supreme Court doing it. The Supreme Court could say that, hey, there were problems with the election, we acknowledge that, and so we're going to split the electoral votes. The election was closer than it appears, but Biden still wins. They could get away with that, and that would be somewhat, of a solution. It would be at least be, better than we're at right now, which, is totally, Biden 306, Trump 232. Under these circumstances where you have all these states up in the air, it's just not feasible. But, the Supreme Court splitting the puppy down the middle, I could see them doing that. It wouldn't satisfy people, but I think that the Supreme Court would think of that as being satisfactory, something that would maintain their legitimacy, because they would be giving a little to both sides. Well, I mean, they'd be giving a lot to the Biden people, and they'd be giving some to the Trump people. They'd say to the Trump people, hey, you were right, this election was screwed up, we acknowledge that. And then they could give to the Biden people, yeah, Biden's president, and so they could say, well, who cares, Biden's president. So watch out for that. I think that'd be kind of a boring outcome, but we'll see where this goes. With that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.